Wealth whispers, but at St. Jude's Preparatory it screamed. Everyone knew the rules. You were either old money, new money, or, God forbid, no money. Charlotte Evans was the invisible girl, the one who ate lunch in the library and wore thrifted sweaters while her classmates carried Birkins. They called her the charity case. They mocked her silence. They thought they knew exactly who she was. But they forgot the one rule about true power. You never see it coming until it's already parking on your front lawn. What happens when the girl you tormented for being poor turns out to hold the deed to your entire life? This is the story of how a beat-up Volvo hid $1 billion secret. The irony of St. Jude's Preparatory was that it sat on a hill overlooking the city of Seattle, physically looking down on the rest of the world. It was a fortress of limestone and ivy, a place where the tuition cost more than the average American mortgage and the parking lot looked like a luxury car dealership. Charlotte Evans, known to the few who acknowledged her existence simply as Charlie, pulled her 2008 Honda Civic into the very back row of the student lot. The engine sputtered, a dying wheeze that earned a sharp turn of heads from a group of juniors leaning against a Porsche Cayenne. Charlie gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Just 3 more months, she told herself. Graduation. Then Stanford, then freedom. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror. No makeup, messy bun, and a hoodie that had seen better days. It was a uniform of invisibility. Or at least, she hoped it was. Nice lawnmower, Evans, a voice sneered as she stepped out of the car. It was Preston Galloway. He was leaning against the Porsche, tossing a set of keys in the air. Beside him stood the Queen of St. Jude's herself, Victoria St. James. Victoria didn't look at Charlie. Looking at Charlie was beneath her. She was busy examining her nails, freshly manicured in a shade of oxblood that probably cost $300. My gardener has a better truck than that, Preston laughed, looking to Victoria for approval. Victoria finally looked up, her blue eyes icy. Don't be mean, Preston. Gardeners actually work. We don't know what Charlotte's family does. Maybe they collect scrap metal. The group erupted in laughter. It was a sound Charlie had grown used to over the last 4 years. It was the background noise of her life, like the hum of a refrigerator or the traffic on I-5. Good morning to you too, Preston, Charlie said quietly, locking her car manually because the fob had died 6 months ago. She walked past them, head down, clutching her chemistry textbook to her chest like a shield. She could feel their eyes on her back. She knew what they saw, the scholarship kid, the diversity hire, the girl who bought her lunch from the vending machine because the cafeteria sushi bar was too expensive. But Charlie wasn't just poor in their eyes, she was an offense to their aesthetic. At St. Jude's, poverty was a disease, and they were terrified it might be contagious. Inside the main hall, the atmosphere was buzzing. It was Founders Week, the most pretentious time of the year. The hallway was lined with banners celebrating the alumni who had gone on to become senators, CEOs, and tech moguls. Did you hear? A girl whispered loudly near the lockers. Victoria's dad is donating the new wing. They're announcing it at the gala on Saturday. The Galloway family is trying to outbid him, though, another replied. Preston said his dad is flying in some Michelin star chef, just for the VIP table. Charlie opened her locker, trying to tune them out. A small, folded piece of paper fluttered out and landed on her scuffed sneaker. She picked it up. It was an invitation to the Founders Gala. Standard issue. Every student got one. Ticket price, $500. Student discount. Parent, guardian. Ticket, $2,500. Charlie sighed and crumpled the paper. She tossed it into the trash bin next to her locker. Not going? Charlie froze. Victoria was standing right behind her, flanked by her 2 lieutenants, Madison and Chloe. I have to work, Charlie lied. It was her go-to excuse. It was simple, believable, and pathetic enough to satisfy them. Work? Victoria tilted her head, feigning confusion. Oh, right, a job. I forget people do that. Where is it this time? Burger King? Or are you scrubbing toilets at the train station? I tutor, Charlie said, her voice steady. Tutor, Victoria repeated, dragging out the word. She stepped closer, invading Charlie's personal space. She smelled of expensive vanilla and entitlement. You know, my dad is the chairman of the board this year. He was looking at the scholarship list. He mentioned your name. Charlie's heart skipped a beat. This was new. Usually the bullying was superficial. Clothes, cars, lunch. This felt structural. He said it's a shame the school spends so much money on charity cases that don't contribute to the endowment. Victoria smiled, a predatory showing of teeth. He thinks the funds could be better used for the polo team, or a new heated pool. My grades are perfect, Charlie said, her voice tightening. I earned my spot. Grades are for people who need resumes, sweetie. Victoria laughed, patting Charlie on the cheek. Connections are for people who run the world. And you? You're just taking up space. Honestly, if you can't afford the gala ticket, do you really belong at St. Jude's? The bell rang, saving Charlie from having to respond. But as she walked to AP Calculus, the dread settled in her stomach like a stone. It wasn't just mean girls anymore. Victoria was threatening her future. If the board chairman wanted her gone, perfect grades might not be enough. She needed to call her dad. Charlie sat on the bleachers in the empty gymnasium during lunch, her phone pressed to her ear. The reception in the gym was terrible, but it was the only place she could be alone. Hello? A deep, gravelly voice answered on the second ring. Hey, Dad, Charlie said, letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Charlotte, is everything okay? Yeah. No, I don't know. She picked at a loose thread on her jeans. It's Founders Week. Ah, her father said. The tone was unreadable. The annual Peacock Parade. They're getting worse, Dad. Victoria St. James. Her father is the board chairman now. She hinted that he's trying to cut the scholarship program. My scholarship. There was a silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, Charlie thought the call had dropped. Dad? I'm here, Charlie. Did she threaten you? She said I'm taking up space. She said, well, it doesn't matter what she said. But Dad, if I lose this spot, I lose the Stanford recommendation. Everything we've worked for. You won't lose it, he said firmly. You don't know these people, Dad. They have so much money. They think they own the air we breathe. Preston Galloway made fun of the Honda again today. The Honda is a reliable vehicle, her father said, sounding slightly amused. It has excellent safety ratings. That's not the point, Charlie snapped, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry, I'm just tired. I'm tired of pretending to be invisible. I'm tired of them looking at me like I'm dirt because I don't wear Gucci to gym class. I know it's hard, Charlie. We agreed on this. You wanted to make it on your own merits. You wanted to know that your grades were yours, not bought. I know, she whispered, but does the lesson have to be this humiliating? Humility is a weapon, Charlotte. Never forget that. Let them underestimate you. It makes the victory sweeter. I don't want a victory. I just want to survive until June. Go to the gala, he said suddenly. Charlie blinked. What? Dad, tickets are $500, and that's just for me. If I bring a parent. Go to the gala, he repeated. I'll wire the money to your account. Buy a ticket. Dad, we can't afford that. I can pick up a few extra shifts, he said, the lie smooth as silk. Buy the ticket, Charlie. Show them you aren't afraid. Stand your ground. Are you coming? She asked, a small glimmer of hope in her chest. I wouldn't miss it for the world, he said, but I might be a little late. I have some business to finish up in Zurich. Zurich? Why are you in Switzerland? Plumbing conference, he said quickly. European pipes are very complex. Listen, I have to go. Buy the dress. Buy the ticket. Chin up, kiddo. The line went dead. Charlie stared at the phone. Plumbing conference. Her dad was a consultant for industrial logistics. Or at least, that's what he told people. He traveled constantly. He lived in a modest apartment in Chicago when he wasn't traveling. He drove a Ford F-150. He sent her money for rent and food, but it was never an extravagant amount. Just enough. She checked her bank app. Deposit received, $5,000. Charlie gasped, $5,000. That was more than he usually sent in 3 months. He must have drained his savings, she thought, a wave of guilt washing over her. He's betting everything on me standing up to them. She couldn't let him down. She stood up, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. She walked out of the gym and straight to the administration office. Victoria and Preston were there, lounging on the leather sofas in the waiting area, probably trying to get out of a detention for texting in class. Charlie walked past them to the glass counter. "Can I help you, dear?" the secretary, Mrs. Gable, asked kindly. She was the only person at St. Jude's who treated Charlie like a human being. "I'd like to purchase a ticket for the Founders' Gala," Charlie said, loud enough for the room to hear. "And a parent ticket." The silence behind her was deafening. "That will be $3,000, Charlotte," Mrs. Gable said gently, lowering her voice. "Are you sure? I know the scholarship fund doesn't cover extracurriculars." Charlie pulled out her debit card. It was a standard blue bank card. "I'm sure." She swiped the card. Approved. As she took the receipt, she turned around. Victoria was staring at her, mouth slightly open. Preston looked confused. "Did you rob a liquor store, Evans?" Preston called out, recovering his sneer. Charlie looked him dead in the eye. "No, Preston, I just broke my piggy bank." She walked out, her heart hammering in her chest. She had the tickets. Now she needed a dress. And she needed to survive the night. But she didn't know that Victoria St. James didn't take defiance lightly. As soon as Charlie left the office, Victoria pulled out her phone. "Daddy," Victoria said, her voice shifting into a sickly sweet whine. "Hi, yeah, listen, there's a problem with the gala seating chart. We need to make a change." "Yeah. Put the Evans girl at table 40. Yes, the one by the kitchen. And Daddy, make sure the waiters know she's on the comp list. I want everyone to know." Victoria hung up and smiled at Preston. "She wants to play dress-up. Fine, let's see how she likes it when the clock strikes 12. The dress wasn't Vera Wang, and it certainly wasn't Chanel. It was a midnight blue silk slip dress found in the back of a vintage consignment shop in downtown Seattle called Past Lives. It cost $80. Charlie stood before the foggy mirror in her cramped apartment bathroom, smoothing the fabric down her hips. It was simple, terrifyingly simple compared to the sequined, tulle-exploded monstrosities she knew the other girls would be wearing. But it fit her like a second skin. She pulled her hair back into a sleek, low bun and applied a coat of red lipstick she'd bought at the drugstore. "You look expensive," her neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, said when Charlie stepped out into the hallway. Mrs. Higgins was 60, chain-smoked, and had been watching out for Charlie since freshman year. "I feel like an imposter," Charlie admitted, clutching her small beaded clutch. Inside was her phone, her ID, and a tube of pepper spray, just in case. "Chin up, girl," Mrs. Higgins said, taking a drag of her cigarette. "Fake it till you make it. Or until you marry rich. Preferably both." Charlie laughed nervously and headed downstairs. Her dad wasn't answering his phone. She had sent him 3 texts. "I'm leaving now." "Are you close? Please tell me you're coming." "No read receipts." Nothing. The drive to the Fairmont Olympic Hotel was a nightmare of traffic and nerves. As she approached the venue, the line of cars transformed. The Hondas and Toyotas disappeared, replaced by Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, and G-Wagons. Charlie's stomach churned as she pulled into the valet line. The valet, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, hesitated when he saw her 2008 Civic. The bumper was held on by duct tape on the left side, a battle scar from a hit-and-run in the school parking lot that no one had confessed to. "Valet is $50, miss," the attendant said through the window, not bothering to open her door. "There's a public garage 3 blocks over if you prefer." "I have a ticket," Charlie said, forcing her voice to stop shaking. She handed him a $50 bill she had withdrawn earlier. "Park it close. My father will be needing it later." The valet raised an eyebrow, took the money, and reluctantly opened her door. Stepping out onto the red carpet felt like stepping onto the surface of the sun. Flashbulbs popped. Not for her, but for the people behind her. A limousine had just pulled up. Charlie hurried toward the entrance, keeping her head high. She could hear the murmurs. "Who is that? Is that the Evans girl? Did she sneak in?" At the check-in desk, a severe-looking woman with glasses peered over her clipboard. "Name? Charlotte Evans, and guest." The woman scanned the list. Her finger stopped. She frowned. Then a small, pitying smile touched her lips. "Ah, yes, Ms. Evans. You're at table 40. "Table 40? Charlie asked. "Where is that?" "It's in the South Annex," the woman said vaguely, "through the main ballroom, to the left, past the buffet." "And my guest?" Charlie asked, glancing at the door. "My father. He's running late." We'll send him to you when he arrives, the woman said, already looking past Charlie to the next guest. Next. Charlie walked into the ballroom. It was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from the gold-leafed ceiling. Waiters in white tuxedos wove through the crowd with trays of champagne and caviar. A string quartet played a soft, haunting melody in the corner. It was a world of absolute, unapologetic power. And Charlie was terrified. She scanned the room for a friendly face, but there were none. Then she saw them. In the center of the room, holding court like royalty, was Victoria St. James. She was wearing a custom-made silver gown that looked like it was woven from diamonds. Beside her was Preston, looking bored in a tuxedo that probably cost more than Charlie's car. Victoria spotted Charlie immediately. It was as if she had a radar for misery. She whispered something to Preston, and they both laughed. Victoria raised her champagne glass in a mock toast across the room. Charlie turned away, her cheeks burning. She needed to find her table. She needed to sit down before her legs gave out. She followed the instructions. Through the ballroom, past the buffet. The tables got further and further apart. The centerpiece flowers became smaller. The lighting became dimmer. Finally, she found it. Table 40 wasn't in the ballroom. It was technically in the service corridor, set up next to the swinging double doors of the kitchen. The table was small, wobbly, and had no tablecloth. There were 2 folding chairs, and sitting in the middle of the table was a single wilting carnation in a water glass. Charlie stared at it. It wasn't just a bad seat, it was a message. You are trash. You belong with the trash. Excuse me, Charlie said to a passing waiter. I think there's a mistake. The waiter checked a small card in his pocket. Table 40, Evans +1. No mistake, miss. This is the overflow seating for non-contributors. He said non-contributors like it was a slur. Charlie sat down. The kitchen doors swung open, blasting her with the smell of seared fish and the sound of chefs shouting. A waiter rushed past, bumping her chair. She checked her phone again. Dad. Where are you? Still nothing. She was alone, sitting at a folding table in a hallway, in an $80 dress, while the people who tormented her feasted on lobster 10 feet away. She should leave. She should get up, walk out, drive home, and never come back. Humility is a weapon, her father had said. This isn't humility, she thought, blinking back tears. This is hell. The gala dinner was an endurance test. Charlie sat with her back straight, staring at the swinging kitchen doors, refusing to let them see her cry. She hadn't touched the bread roll the waiter had tossed onto her plate. Every few minutes, a group of students would accidentally wander past the service corridor. Oh my God, is that Charlie? Madison's voice drifted in. I thought this was the coat check. Maybe she's the new dishwasher. Chloe giggled. They snapped photos with their phones, flashes blinding Charlie in the dim light, before scurrying back to the main ballroom to show Victoria. Around 8:00 p.m., the lights in the main ballroom dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, a booming voice announced, please welcome the chairman of the board, Mr. Sterling St. James. The applause was thunderous. Charlie shifted in her chair to see through the archway. Sterling St. James was a tall, imposing man with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked exactly like Victoria, just with broader shoulders and more expensive tailoring. Thank you, Sterling said, gripping the podium. Tonight is about excellence. It is about preserving the legacy of St. Jude's. We are not just a school, we are a forge. We create the leaders of tomorrow. He paused for effect. But excellence requires focus, it requires resources, and frankly, it requires purity of purpose. We have spent too long trying to be everything to everyone. Next year, the board will be voting on a new initiative, St. Jude's First. We will be re-evaluating our financial aid programs to ensure that our resources are focused on those families who truly invest in our future. A ripple of applause went through the room. Charlie felt cold. He was talking about cutting the scholarships. He was talking about getting rid of her. To kick off tonight's fundraising, Sterling continued, we have a very special auction item, a summer internship at St. James Holdings, followed by a guaranteed recommendation to the Ivy League school of your choice. The room gasped. This was the golden ticket. Bidding starts at $50,000. 60, someone shouted. 70. Charlie watched, mesmerized by the casual way they threw around numbers that could feed a family for a decade. Suddenly, a shadow fell over her table. She looked up. Victoria was standing there, holding a glass of red wine. She was alone this time. Her eyes were bright with malice. "Enjoying the view from the cheap seats?" Victoria asked sweetly. "Go away, Victoria," Charlie said, her voice low. "My dad is amazing, isn't he?" Victoria gestured to the stage where the bidding had reached 100,000. "He's going to clean up this school, get rid of the weeds." "I'm not a weed," Charlie said, standing up. She was tired of sitting. She was tired of being small. "Aren't you?" Victoria stepped closer. "Look at you, Charlotte. You're wearing a dress that smells like a grandmother's attic. You're sitting by the kitchen. Your father isn't here. You know why?" "He's busy," Charlie said. "He's ashamed," Victoria hissed. "He knows you don't belong here. He's probably at home, drinking a beer, laughing at how stupid you look, thinking you could be one of us." "My father is worth 10 of you," Charlie spat back. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Is that so?" She tilted her glass. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, slow and cruel. The dark red liquid poured out of the crystal flute, splashing onto the bodice of Charlie's blue silk dress. It soaked in instantly, turning the fabric black, dripping down to her waist. Charlie gasped, jumping back, but it was too late. The dress was ruined. "Oops," Victoria said, her face a mask of mock horror. "My hand slipped. Don't worry, it's probably an improvement. Now it has some color." "You—" Charlie was shaking. She looked around. A few waiters had seen it, but they turned their heads. No one was going to help her. "What are you going to do?" Victoria whispered, leaning in. "Tell the principal? My dad owns the principal. Cry to your daddy. He's not here. You're all alone, Charlie. You're nothing." Victoria turned on her heel and walked back into the ballroom, leaving Charlie standing in a puddle of wine and humiliation. That was it, the breaking point. Charlie grabbed her purse. She didn't care about the scholarship anymore. She didn't care about Stanford. She just wanted to get out. She ran toward the exit, pushing past a waiter. She needed fresh air. She needed to breathe. Charlie burst out of the double doors onto the front steps of the hotel. The cool night air hit her face, drying the tears that were starting to fall. She fumbled for her keys. She just wanted to go home. Leaving so soon? Preston Galloway was standing by the valet stand, smoking a cigarette. He saw the wine stain on her dress and smirked. "Rough night? Looks like you had a little spill. Did the waitstaff confuse you for a rag?" "Move, Preston," Charlie said, trying to step around him. He stepped in her path. "You know, my dad bet me $100 you wouldn't last until dessert." "Thanks for the cash, Evans." "I said move," Charlie shouted. "Make me," Preston laughed. He was looming over her, enjoying the power trip. "What are you going to do? Hit me with your welfare check?" The valet attendants were watching, snickering. Charlie felt trapped. The world was closing in. The luxury cars, the cruel laughter, the wine soaking cold against her skin. Then the ground vibrated. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a sound. A low, rhythmic thrumming that felt like it was coming from everywhere at once. Thwop, 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 thwop. The wind picked up suddenly, whipping Charlie's hair across her face. Preston looked up, his smirk faltering. "What is that?" The sound grew louder, deeper. It was the sound of heavy machinery. The sound of power. From around the corner of the street, blinding blue and red lights erupted. Sirens wailed, but not police sirens. These were deeper, sharper. A motorcycle swept around the corner, then another, and another. 6 police motorcycles in formation, clearing the intersection. They blocked the traffic on both sides of the street in front of the hotel. "Is the president in town?" the valet asked, his eyes wide. Then came the SUVs. Black, tinted, armored, Chevy Suburbans with diplomatic flags snapping on the hoods. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. They didn't just drive, they glided with aggressive precision. They pulled up to the curb, boxing in the Ferraris and Lamborghinis, forcing the valet to scramble out of the way. Preston took a step back, looking confused. What's going on? The lead SUV's door flew open before it even came to a complete stop. 4 men in tactical suits jumped out. They weren't hotel security, they were distinct. Earpieces, bulges under their jackets that suggested heavy weaponry. pins on their lapels that Charlie didn't recognize. They fanned out, creating a perimeter. "Secure the entrance," one shouted. "Clear the sidewalk." One of the guards walked straight up to Preston. He was 6'4" and looked like he chewed gravel for breakfast. "Step back, sir," the guard barked. "Do you know who my father is?" Preston stammered, his arrogance flickering. "I don't care," the guard said, placing a hand on Preston's chest and shoving him back 3 feet like he was a cardboard cutout. "Back, now!" Preston stumbled, nearly falling over a planter. Charlie stood frozen. The wine stain on her dress was forgotten. She watched as the third vehicle, a stretched, armored Mercedes-Maybach Pullman, a car that cost more than the entire St. Jude's gymnasium, rolled to a stop right in front of her. The rear door opened. A silence fell over the street. Even the valet attendants stopped breathing. First, a cane emerged. It was black wood, topped with a handle made of pure, gleaming silver. Then a man stepped out. He was wearing a tuxedo, but it wasn't like the ones inside. This was bespoke Italian tailoring, cut sharp as a razor. He wore a long cashmere overcoat draped over his shoulders. His hair was salt and pepper, perfectly coiffed. He turned. Charlie's breath hitched. It was her dad. But it wasn't the dad she knew. It wasn't the dad in the flannel shirts who fixed the sink. It wasn't the dad who drove the Ford F-150. This man radiated an aura of terrifying authority. He adjusted his cufflinks, diamonds that caught the streetlights, and scanned the crowd. His eyes landed on Charlie. His expression softened instantly, but then his gaze dropped to the red wine stain on her dress. His eyes snapped back up, and the softness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard rage that made the temperature on the sidewalk drop 10 degrees. He didn't walk to her, he marched. The security detail parted like the Red Sea. "Charlotte," he said, his voice calm but carrying a weight she had never heard before. "Dad," she whispered, What is this?" He reached her and gently took her hands. "I apologize for the delay, Moromo. The jet had a mechanical issue in Zurich. I had to charter a replacement." "Jet? Dad, your car?" Charlie pointed at the Maybach. "A rental," he said dismissively. "For the evening." He looked at the stain on her dress again. He reached out and touched the wet fabric. "Who did this?" It was an accident," Charlie lied, looking at the ground. "Charlotte," he said, lifting her chin with a finger. "I told you, humility is a weapon. But tonight we are done with weapons. Tonight we use the nuclear option." He turned to the head of his security detail. "Gregor." "Sir," the large man replied instantly. "My daughter has been assaulted," he said, his voice loud enough for Preston, who was currently shaking near the wall, to hear. "We are going inside." "Dad, you can't," Charlie hissed. "We don't have a table. They put me by the kitchen. It's humiliating." Her father laughed. It was a dark, dangerous sound. "We don't need a table, Charlotte," he said, offering her his arm. "I own the building." Charlie stared at him. "What?" "The hotel," he said simply. "I bought the Fairmont chain 3 days ago. I wanted to make sure the service would be up to standard for tonight. Clearly, I need to fire some management." He pulled her close. "Are you ready to meet your father, Charlotte?" "The real me." Charlie looked at the armored convoy. She looked at Preston, who was pale as a ghost. She looked at her dad, the man who had pretended to be a plumber for 18 years, while secretly doing what? Ruling the world? She took a deep breath. She took his arm. "I'm ready," she said. "Good," he said, signaling the guards. "Open the doors, and Gregor, tell the drivers to keep the engines running. We won't be staying long." The security team kicked open the double doors of the hotel. The Billionaire had arrived, and St. Jude's Preparatory was about to learn a very expensive lesson. The double doors of the grand ballroom didn't just open, they were thrown wide by the security team. The sound echoed like a gunshot, silencing the string quartet instantly. 500 heads turned. First came the security detail, 4 men in dark suits, moving with the synchronized precision of a SWAT team. They cleared a path down the center aisle, pushing aside chairs and murmuring guests. Then Charlie and her father stepped into the light. Charlie felt like she was floating. Her hand was tucked securely in the crook of her father's arm. He walked with a slow, deliberate cadence, the cane tapping rhythmically against the marble floor. Click, step, click, step. The whispers started immediately. Who is that? Is that Charlie Evans? Look at the father. Is that a Brioni suit? I thought her dad was a plumber. On stage, Sterling St. James froze mid-sentence. He adjusted his glasses, squinting into the spotlights. He didn't recognize the man at first, but he recognized the aura of power. It was a scent predators knew well. Victoria, standing near the front table with Preston, dropped her champagne glass. It shattered, but no one looked at the mess. They were too busy looking at the ghost walking toward the stage. "Dad," Charlie whispered, gripping his arm tighter. "Everyone is staring." "Let them," her father, Nathaniel Cross, said calmly, staring straight ahead. "They've spent 4 years looking through you. Now they can look at you." They reached the center of the room. The path was blocked by the main VIP table, Table 1, where Victoria and the school principal were seated. Nathaniel stopped. He looked at the table. Then he looked at the podium. "Mr. St. James," Nathaniel's voice boomed. He didn't need a microphone. His baritone filled the cavernous room. "I believe there's been a clerical error with the seating chart." Sterling St. James gripped the podium, trying to regain control. "Excuse me? This is a private event. Who are you, and how did you get past security?" "I am security," Nathaniel said, gesturing to the men flanking the room. "And as for who I am, ask your daughter. She seems to know quite a lot about my family's financial situation." Victoria's face went pale. She took a step back, hiding behind Preston. "He's nobody, Dad," Victoria squeaked, her voice cracking. "He's the plumber. He fixes toilets." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the room. Nathaniel smiled. It was a terrifying expression. "A plumber? Yes. I do deal with pipes, specifically the pipelines that carry natural gas across 3 continents, and the fiber optic cables that run under the Atlantic, and occasionally the sewage that accumulates in places like this." He turned to the principal, Mr. Henderson, who was trembling in his seat. "Mr. Henderson," Nathaniel said, "my daughter Charlotte was seated at table 40, next to the kitchen. Is that correct?" Well, space was limited," Henderson stammered. "Space," Nathaniel repeated. "Interesting. Since my family office donated the funds for this entire building in 1998 under a blind trust, I assumed there would be space." The room went dead silent. "What?" Sterling St. James whispered into the microphone. "The Cross Foundation," Nathaniel said, dropping the name like a bomb. "My name is Nathaniel Cross." The gasps were audible. Everyone in Seattle knew the name Cross. It was old money, railroad money, tech money. It was the kind of wealth that didn't just buy buildings, it bought zip codes. The Cross family was notoriously private, rarely seen in public, their philanthropy handled through anonymous trusts. "Cross?" Sterling's face drained of color. "But the girl, Evans." "Her mother's maiden name," Nathaniel said softly, a shadow of grief passing over his face. "She wanted a normal life. She didn't want to be the Cross heiress. She wanted friends who liked her for who she was. I respected that." He looked at Victoria. "It seems that was a mistake, because instead of friends, she found you." Nathaniel let go of Charlie and took 2 steps toward Victoria. The security guards tensed, but Nathaniel simply reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief. A white silk handkerchief with the initials NC embroidered in gold. He looked at the wine stain on Charlie's dress. "Red wine," Nathaniel noted. "A Cabernet, judging by the smell. 2018, a cheap vintage." He turned to Sterling. "Your daughter threw this on my daughter, because she thought Charlotte was poor, because she thought poverty was a crime." Sterling was sweating now. "Mr. Cross, Nathaniel, please. It's just kids being kids. We can pay for the dress. I'll write you a check right now." "A check?" Nathaniel laughed. "Sterling, do you know who owns the debt on St. James Holdings?" Sterling froze. The First National Bank." "And who owns the controlling interest in First National Bank?" Nathaniel asked, tilting his head. Sterling's knees buckled. He grabbed the podium for support. "You see," Nathaniel continued, his voice dropping to a conversational volume that was somehow louder than shouting. "I don't want your money, Sterling. I have enough. What I want is an explanation. I want to know why the chairman of the board is proposing to cut scholarships for underprivileged students. I want to know why my daughter was seated by the garbage. It was a misunderstanding, Sterling cried. We value diversity. No, you don't, Nathaniel said. You value exclusion. You think wealth makes you better. You think it gives you the right to crush people. He turned back to Charlie. He offered her his arm again. But here is the lesson, Charlotte, he said, loud enough for the whole room to hear. True wealth isn't about the car you drive. It's about the power to protect the people you love. And the power to walk away from tables where respect is not being served. He looked at the principal. We're leaving. Charlotte will not be returning to St. Jude's. She has already been accepted early to Stanford. I believe the endowment I provide to the university will ensure she is quite comfortable there. He turned to the crowd. Enjoy your dinner. I'm cancelling the catering check, by the way. Since I own the hotel, I think I'll treat the staff to the lobster tonight. You all can have the bread rolls. He snapped his fingers. Let's go, Charlie. The silence in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic was heavy, a physical weight that pressed down on 500 pairs of shoulders. It was the kind of silence that usually follows a gunshot or a natural disaster. Nathaniel Cross stood in the center of the room, his hand resting gently on Charlotte's arm. He didn't look like a plumber anymore. He didn't even look like a businessman. In the harsh glare of the chandeliers, he looked like a judge delivering a final verdict. Sterling St. James, the man who had terrorized the school board for a decade, was gripping the podium so hard his knuckles were white. He opened his mouth to speak, to bluster, to demand security remove this intruder, but the name Cross had lodged itself in his throat like a fishbone. You, Sterling croaked, his voice stripped of all its polished arrogance. You're Nathaniel Cross, the recluse, the infrastructure magnate. I prefer logistics consultant, Nathaniel said, his voice smooth and cold as polished marble. It covers a wide range of activities, including the acquisition of failing hospitality chains. He gestured vaguely at the ballroom walls, and the restructuring of bad debt. The implication hit Sterling like a physical blow. The room watched as the color drained from his face, leaving him looking gray and old. Dad, Victoria whispered. She tugged on her father's tuxedo sleeve, her eyes darting around the room, seeing her social standing evaporating in real time. Dad, do something. Tell him to leave. He's lying. Look at his shoes. Look at her dress. Sterling slapped her hand away. It was a sharp, shocking sound that echoed through the room. Shut up, Victoria, Sterling hissed, not looking at her. His eyes were locked on Nathaniel. Mr. Cross, if I had known, if there had been any indication, if you had known I was a billionaire, you would have treated my daughter with respect. Nathaniel finished the sentence for him. He took a step forward, the tap of his cane echoing on the parquet floor. That is precisely the problem, Sterling. You only respect the price tag. You don't respect the person. Nathaniel turned his gaze to the table where Victoria sat. He looked at Madison and Chloe, Victoria's loyal lieutenants. They were currently inching their chairs away from Victoria, physically distancing themselves from the blast zone. And you, Nathaniel said, addressing the girls. They froze. I have the security logs from the last 4 years. The locker vandalism, the cafeteria incidents, the digital harassment. He reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a folded document. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was a single sheet of heavy cream-colored paper. This, Nathaniel said, holding it up, is the deed to the land St. Jude's Preparatory stands on. My grandfather leased it to the school in 1955 for $1 a year. The lease is up for renewal next month. The principal, Mr. Henderson, nearly fell out of his chair. He scrambled up, knocking over a glass of water. Mr. Cross, please, the school, the community. The lease, Nathaniel continued, ignoring the principal's panic, has a morality clause. It states that the institution must foster an environment of integrity, humility, and kindness. I believe you have violated all 3. He handed the paper to a passing waiter. Burn it, Nathaniel said. Wait, Sterling screamed, lunging forward. You can't. That's the school, my legacy. Your legacy is a bully in a stolen dress, Nathaniel said calmly. And my legacy is standing right here. He squeezed Charlotte's hand. Charlotte looked at her father. For the first time, she saw the terrifying scope of his world. He hadn't just come to pick her up. He had come to dismantle their reality. "Dad," she whispered, "that's enough." Nathaniel looked down at her. The cold fire in his eyes vanished, replaced by a warmth that was only for her. "Is it?" "They know," she said, looking at Victoria. Victoria wasn't fighting anymore. She was weeping, her face buried in her hands, her silver dress looking like tinfoil under the harsh lights. Preston had disappeared entirely, likely slipping out through the kitchen, the very place he had mocked Charlotte for sitting near. "They know they're small," Charlotte said, her voice steady. "Let's go." Nathaniel nodded. He turned back to the room one last time. "Enjoy the lobster," he said. "I'm told it's market price. And for those of you with accounts at First National, check your interest rates tomorrow morning." He offered his arm to Charlotte. "Shall we, Ms. Cross?" "We shall," she said. The walk to the exit was a blur of faces. People who had ignored her for 4 years were now desperate to make eye contact. "Charlie, you look great," someone shouted. "Charlie, call me." "I always liked her," she heard a mother whisper to her son. It was sickening. It was hilarious. It was the greatest walk of her life. They pushed through the double doors, the cool night air hitting them like a blessing. The humidity of the crowded ballroom was replaced by the crisp Seattle wind. The paparazzi had arrived. Dozens of flashes went off like lightning storms as they descended the stairs. "Mr. Cross, is it true you bought the Fairmont?" "Charlotte, who are you wearing?" "Is the rumor true about the St. James bankruptcy?" Nathaniel's security team formed a wedge, pushing the photographers back. "No comment. Back up, back up." The valet had the Maybach Pullman waiting at the curb, engine idling with a low, powerful rumble. The back door was held open. Charlotte slid onto the cream leather seats. The interior was a sanctuary, soundproofed, smelling of rich mahogany and fresh lilies. Her father climbed in beside her. The door closed with a heavy, solid thump, sealing out the noise of the sirens and the shouting photographers. As the car pulled away, merging seamlessly into the flow of traffic, the adrenaline that had been holding Charlotte up suddenly crashed. She slumped back against the seat, letting out a long, shaky breath. She looked down at her hands. They were trembling. "Here," Nathaniel said, opening a small refrigerator built into the center console. He pulled out a glass bottle of Coca-Cola, the old-fashioned kind, made with real sugar. He popped the cap on the edge of the console table. "Drink. You need the sugar." Charlotte took the bottle. The cold glass felt grounding. She took a long sip. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. "So," she said, staring at the partition that separated them from the driver. "You own the land the school is on." "Technically, the family trust owns it," Nathaniel said, loosening his bow tie. "But yes, I can choose not to renew the lease." "Are you going to close the school?" "That depends on you," he said. Charlotte turned to look at him. "Me?" "You're the trustee, Charlotte. Or you will be on your 18th birthday." Charlotte choked on her soda. "What?" Nathaniel sighed, rubbing his temples. He looked tired now. The invincible titan of industry had faded, leaving behind a father who was trying to navigate a minefield. "I didn't want you to know like this," he said softly. "I wanted to wait until you graduated. Until you were safe at Stanford." "Why did we live in the apartment, Dad?" Charlotte asked, her voice rising. "Why did I wear thrift store clothes? Why did I have to listen to them call me trash for 4 years when you could have bought the whole city?" "Because of your mother," Nathaniel said. The pain in his voice was raw. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a worn leather wallet. He opened it to a picture of a woman with laughing eyes and wind-blown hair standing in front of a small beat-up cottage. "Elena hated this life," Nathaniel said, gesturing to the luxury car. "She hated the security guards. She hated the fake friends who only wanted money. She hated the way wealth warped people. When she got sick, she made me promise." "Promise what?" "That I would raise you to be real," he said. "She was terrified you would turn into someone like Victoria St. James, someone who thought the world owed them something just because of their last name. She wanted you to know what it felt like to work, to struggle, to earn your place." Tears pricked Charlotte's eyes. "So it was a test?" "No," Nathaniel shook his head. "It was a protection. I wanted you to build a character that money couldn't buy. And tonight?" He smiled, a genuine proud smile. Tonight, when you stood up to them? When you walked out with your head high, even covered in wine? You proved her right. You are stronger than any of them, Charlotte. You have something they will never have. What's that? Perspective, he said, and empathy. You know what it's like to be invisible, so you will never overlook anyone. Charlotte looked down at the wine stain on her dress. The dark red blotch had dried, stiffening the fabric. It was ugly, but it was also a battle scar. I still can't believe you bought the hotel, she said, wiping her eyes. Impulse buy, he admitted with a grin. I was angry. No one puts my daughter by the kitchen. And Sterling St. James has been embezzling from his own company for years, Nathaniel said casually. I've known for a long time. I was waiting for the right moment to hand the evidence to the SEC. Tonight seemed like a good time. So he's going to jail? For a very long time, Nathaniel said. And Victoria, well, she's going to learn what it's like to actually be poor. I imagine the transition will be difficult for her. The car slowed down. Charlotte looked out the window. She expected a mansion. She expected the gates of a sprawling estate. Instead, they were pulling into a parking lot with a flickering neon sign. Jerry's 24-hour diner. Dad? Charlotte asked. I haven't eaten since Zurich, Nathaniel said, patting his stomach, and I believe I recall you saying that the gala food was inedible. The driver opened the door. Nathaniel stepped out onto the cracked pavement, his patent leather shoes shining under the buzzing neon lights. He held his hand out for her. They walked into the diner. It was 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. The place was mostly empty, save for a few truckers and a couple of college students studying in a booth. The smell of frying bacon and old coffee hit them. It was a million miles away from the truffles and champagne of the Fairmont. The waitress, a woman named Barb who had served Charlotte pancakes on her 16th birthday, looked up. Her eyes went wide as she took in the tuxedo, the ruined silk dress, and the diamonds on Nathaniel's cuffs. Well, don't you two look like you escaped a movie set, Barb quipped. Prom night gone wrong. Something like that, Charlotte laughed. It felt good to laugh. Booth in the back is open, Barb said. Menus are on the table. They slid into the red vinyl booth. The table was sticky. The ketchup bottle was half empty. It was perfect. I'll have the double cheeseburger, Nathaniel said, not even looking at the menu, with extra onions, and a chocolate malt. I'll have the same, Charlotte said, but hold the onions, and a side of chili cheese fries. Nathaniel loosened his tie completely, draping it over the back of the seat. He looked at Charlotte across the table. You know, he said, regarding the school lease. Yeah? I think we shouldn't burn it, he said thoughtfully. I think we should renew it, but with conditions. What conditions? New scholarship program, he said. Fully funded, 50% of the student body, based on merit and need, and maybe a new student council oversight committee. Headed by who? Charlotte asked, raising an eyebrow. I think you'd be excellent for the job, he said, if you decide to go back. Or we can just go to Stanford early. It's up to you. Charlotte traced the pattern on the Formica table. She thought about the hallways of St. Jude's. She thought about the kids who were scared, the ones who ate lunch in the library, the ones who felt small. If she left, nothing would change. Another Victoria would rise, another Sterling would take over. But if she stayed, she was across now. She had the power. She could burn the hierarchy to the ground and build something new. I'm going back, Charlotte said firmly. Nathaniel smiled. I thought you might say that. But Dad, yes? Can we maybe get a new car? The Honda is, well, the duct tape is starting to peel. I think we can arrange that, he said. I have a few cars in storage. There's a vintage Porsche 911 that your mother used to love. It's not a Maybach, but it has character. I'll take it, she said. Barb arrived with the milkshakes. She set the tall, frosty glasses down with a clatter. Here you go, Rockefeller, Barb teased. Don't drink it too fast, or you'll get a brain freeze. Nathaniel Cross, the billionaire who had just brought a corporate empire to its knees, picked up his milkshake and clinked his glass against Charlotte's. To humility, he said. To plumbing, Charlotte countered, grinning. To the future, he said, his eyes shining. They drank. The shake was cold, sweet, and thick. Outside, the rain began to fall on the city of Seattle, washing away the dust, the dirt, and the spilled wine. The war was over, and Charlotte Evans Cross had won. And just like that, the hierarchy of St. Jude's crumbled in a single night. Not with violence, but with the one thing bullies never understand: the truth. Charlotte didn't need the money to be worthy, she already was. The money was just the microphone she needed to make them finally listen. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? The person you ignore today might be the one holding the keys to your future tomorrow. Be kind, be humble, because you never know who is really sitting across the table from you. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, hit that like button, it really helps the channel. And if you want more stories about underdogs taking back their power, subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. What would you have done if you were Charlotte? Would you have forgiven Victoria? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next one.